We mentioned it earlier in the phasing spot that there was some safety concerns last week at the Bree show for the Mid-Atlantic sale. They had the sloppy track, and because of that, it necessitated the move to Sunday and the mandate that there should be gallops only during the last portion of what was supposed to be the Bree show. And that brings up an interesting point, and I think most interesting case study in something we've talked about before on this show, where certain consigners have chosen to gallop their horses before, but they are still in the vast minority in those cases. This time, when it's mandated that you have like a third of the catalog almost who just galloped on Sunday, it's going to be really interesting to see the data and how those sales compare to the horses who did have an official breeze time. And John, I'm curious to get your thought on this because, West Point and DJ Stable not going to shy away from that kind of thing. You look no further than Sandman, who was a $1.2 million horse just as a galloper last year at OBS March. But beyond, he might have just been that unique individual. Beyond that, John, like, how do you analyze this sale for the gallopers versus the breezers?
Joe, I can give you some interesting insight because not only are we involved as a buyer and also as a seller, but I'm on the board at OBS, and I can kind of look behind the curtain and give you guys an opportunity to see what's going on in some of those very heated, very intimate conversations that go on with amongst the board of directors. And I'm proud to say that I'm a board member at OBS. I'm also very proud of Phasig for making the decision to shift gears and really turn the Undertax show on its ear. And basically make the change for equine safety and to make sure that the athletes are going, as safe as possible. Now, again, consigners are going to be consigners. They are going to try to push the horses and sell them to the best of their ability, showcase them to the best of their ability. So if on the way up to Maryland, they had it in their head that horses were going to breeze, it's hard to get them and their exercise riders and the horses, for that matter, to relax and slow down to the point where they're going to be galloping, which is why OBS had implemented hey, if you want to gallop your horse, you have to make the announcement when you enter the horse, weeks in advance. So that way, A, we can put it on the catalog, and B, the horses know that when they step foot on the racetrack, it's not to go in a gallop in 11 flat. Okay. It's basically to elongate your stride and relax and be on the track. That was not a luxury that Phasig had at this sale. So I think the fact that they announced they wanted to go with a gallop only for the last group of horses that hadn't breezed yet was really a step, a bold step, I think, and a correct step, because they were focused primarily on, let's make sure that our athletes come home and let's make sure that we still give the buyers an opportunity to see these horses, athleticism, and see them on the racetrack to the best of their ability. So it was not an easy needle to thread. It was not an easy situation to negotiate. But I give Boyd and Anasites and the rest of the team at Phasig kudos for making that very difficult decision of saying, we're going to make sure that we get the horses to show themselves in the best possible light, yet in the safest light, because we don't know exactly what the problem is or what the issue is that we're trying to combat, and we don't have enough time to do it.
No, for sure. And I honestly think this is, like I said, I think this is a good case study for the business. And I think it's, I think we do need to move more in that direction over time to gallop and maybe not go 9-3 or 20-1 or 20-2. I'm sympathetic to the idea that like the consigners put in a lot of work over the winter to get those horses to go fast, and then all of a sudden, like, you're not able to showcase them to the best of their ability. But I think there is a lot you can glean from a gallop. You can see how the horse moves. You can still measure stride length. Obviously you have to step it up significantly to figure out what they're going to do in a race situation. But at the end of the day, like, is an eighth of a mile breeze really that indicative of what the horse is going to do when the lights come on the racetrack? And I don't know necessarily that it is that instructive. It's a showcase, I think, for horses and for buyers that want one specific thing, and that's like blazing speed. That's not necessarily what suggests they're going to be a successful racehorse in the long term. So, like I said, we're not going to shy away from buying gallop only horses. And I think I credit Fasig as well, because there was a tragedy on Wednesday with a horse breaking down, and this could potentially hurt business going to a Gallop only show on Sunday. But at the end of the day, like they took the step that, hey, we can't have any more catastrophic injuries. Like this is something, that's priority number one. And I think that there's a lot of racetracks that have done the same thing. And I don't know, it's just yet another thing that makes me feel like people get it now, like across the industry, whether it's racetracks or sales companies or whoever, they get it, that it's like the most important thing is that the horses come back to the barn safe. And if it costs us a little business in the short term, then so be it. But we can't have something like that continue to happen on our watch.
Yeah, and Joe, I think you bring up a really good point. And Rajiv said it earlier as well, is that HISA is important, and it's important to have an adult in the room and give us the rules. And when it comes to 2-year-old sales, they don't have the jurisdiction to be able to come in and say, here's what's wrong with this racetrack, or hey, we're shutting this down. So for these other entities, these private entities, whether it's OBS or Fasig in this example, to come to that conclusion on their own and say, you know what, we need to make sure this is safe for our athletes in order to move forward. And yes, it's going to cost us money in essence in the short run, but the long-term gain is that it's going to be a net positive. I think that's a prophylactic effect of HISA being involved, is that, people are focused on safety now. And that was not the case a few years ago. It was, I'm going to try to grind up this horse. Not everybody, but there were some bad actors that were saying, I'm going to use this horse to its nth degree and squeeze all the juice out of this lemon in essence, and let the chips fall where they may, because I'm already on to the next horse. That's not the feeling anymore, at least for the predominance of the industry. And I think, you and I have talked about it before, whether it's HISA or some other governing body, the fact that we have, the specter of the rules over us, and even if it doesn't necessarily overarch into that part of the industry, people are thinking that way. And that's a win as far as I'm concerned.
And also, like, if you're doing your homework, like it's an opportunity, like for buyers, a horse gallops instead of going 10-1 and someone automatically crosses them off of their list because of that. Like there's an opportunity for you.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And some of the big buyers are taking notice of this. Yeah. It's not just us collectively, but you have John Stewart, who said, I'm not going to buy any horses unless they're galloping. And you have the commish, Mike Rispoli, saying, I'm only going to buy gallop only horses. And there are others that are quieter about it. I know you're going to find that hard to believe that there are quieter owners than those two, but there are owners that are, that are being more subtle and being more strategic about buying these Gallop up onlys. And I think that there's a different subset of buyers that are willing and anxious to buy those types of horses.
Yeah, because it leaves more meat on the bone for you when you get the horse to the racetrack. Like because that was not their best day in terms of how fast they can go. Whereas a lot of horses who do breeze those crazy times, that's probably their peak.
That's probably the peak. Exactly. It's like me in high school.